Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I am with you today because it's a troubling day. Once again, we have seen violence that has taken place and caught the attention of the nation. And once again, we're talking about a subject that we never enjoy speaking about, especially when we have to speak honestly with you about it. Obviously, we're talking about mass shootings. Obviously, we're talking about the shooting in Brooklyn that occurred with so many injured and dead. It is never a pleasant conversation to have, but it is all the more necessary to have it at a time when so many have heightened emotions, fear, and chaos reigns. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about solutions. But before we do that, we do want to mention that we are hoping, if you are new to this channel, that we thank you for being part of our audience at this time. We do long-form political commentary, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you, where we seek out your voice, your thoughts about the issues that affect us all every day, not just in the United States, but across the world. And we do so by receiving your tweets and your chats and also your phone calls. And we do hope that this Sunday, like every Sunday, at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will join us for a conversation about the issues that matter to you. But today we're going to be talking in reference to the mass shootings. The question of mass shootings, the question of gun control. It is a subject we have talked about often and repeatedly on this channel, because we have to. We know there is a tragedy that is going on, that has happened in New York today. We know there are families who are suffering deeply and profoundly, and it is something that we would never wish on even our worst enemy. And we give our condolences to those who have lost someone today, or even those who have suffered the trauma of injury or just living through these kind of mass shooting events. But we also must say that we must keep our minds about us. We must not be overwhelmed by emotion at this time. The thing that will allow people to get through some of the worst kinds of events in our lives is by not feeding into the emotion of that moment. Whether it's a civil coup, whether it's an earthquake, fires or floods, whether it's a car accident or a mass shooting, whatever the trauma, we have to stay calm and we have to think through to try and find solutions to the problems that persist. Because if we give in to our base emotions, nothing will get resolved, and very likely things will only get worse. And we hate to have to be saying that, but we have to say that, and we do have to say that now, because action is taking place now. We see that money and leadership, elected leaders across the United States are taking action right now. When emotions are at their highest, we are seeing people making moves, both political and substantive, that are going to change people's lives, that are going to change lives in America forever. So yes, now is the time to address this, to call not only for calm, but to understand the consequences of every action that is being taken as we speak. And I wish that this were the first time that we have been through a harrowing event in this nation, that we are, for the first time, speaking to our leaders who are acting out of emotion on a subject that is absolutely terrible. But the honest truth is, it isn't new. This isn't the first time, and it won't be the last time either. We have to be honest about these things. In fact, we know that mass shootings happen about 20 to 30 times a year, every year, for 4 decades. And that because of these 20 to 30 mass shootings a year, somewhere around 100 to 120 people are killed each year for 40 years. That is a fact. It's been well documented. And everything that you have been promised from every politician, Democrat, Republican, every party, has failed. They have done nothing to be able to change these statistics that some years go up a little bit or down a little bit, but overall are staying essentially the same. The fact is, our focus is on the wrong things, and it has always been on the wrong things. It was in 2013 that we were talking about the New York SAFE Act, which was put in place almost immediately after the Sandy Hook shootings. And we were promised by then Governor Andrew Cuomo that by taking this decisive action to restrict the Second Amendment, to punish law-abiding citizens, that this would make you safe. And therefore, New York State limited the size of magazines, restricted the types of firearms that could be sold within this state, and turned thousands, tens of thousands of New Yorkers into criminals overnight. It didn't help. It didn't change anything. It didn't stop crime nor mass shootings. We've seen similar things happen across the entire United States. With the Obama administration, with Joe Biden stepping out to put out 32 executive orders about gun control to try and prevent average American citizens from being able to buy firearms. And it did not help. And it did not work. In 2017, we took a deep and serious look at mass shootings. And the fact is, the data has not changed since 2017. The same things that we saw then exist now. New York, Illinois, California are among the most restrictive states in the entire United States about gun ownership. That is a fact. We have more registries here. We have more restrictions on the type of firearms that are available. We have more restrictions on magazine sizes. We have more investigation into regular citizens owning firearms. And it doesn't matter because we continue to see that year after year after year, looking at FBI data and all forms of data, the New York GIVE report, we see year after year, as we have reported year after year, they're not having an impact. But New York said, well, that means we haven't done enough. We need even more restrictions than the 5,000 restrictions that exist in New York State against guns and gun owners. And then they passed the red flag law, the extreme risk protection order. And we were promised at the time, in 2018, that if we passed this, you would be safe, that we would cut down on the number of mass shootings that happen in the United States, in New York State, that we would join 18 other states that had also taken a similar action. And we were promised that being able to punish people for not committing a crime, for punishing people before any crime had actually taken place and denying them due process, that would make us safe and we would be better off. And that was a lie. On March 27th of this year, 2022, we spoke about what Mayor Eric Adams had presented to the public in his tweet, showing a mother and a young child being robbed because of two criminals who happened to have a gun. And his answer was, well, we need an anti-gun unit. We need to bring back an anti-gun unit. And just like when we said about the New York SAFE Act, just like what we had said about the red flag laws, again, we said about the anti-gun unit. The problem isn't the gun. The problem is the underlying crime, that this mother is being robbed by criminals, that these criminals believe they can act with impunity. That was the problem. That is the issue, much like what we see when we talk about mass shootings. The problem isn't the shooting. It isn't the firearm. It doesn't even matter what the firearm is. The problem is that someone decided that the only solution that they had was to kill innocent individuals. That's the horror of it. And that's the underlying root problem that we need to resolve. Not the firearm. The firearm is meaningless. Because just like what we said with Eric Adams on March 27th, this robbery would have happened if these two thugs had a knife, if they had a baseball bat. In fact, even if they were barehanded. Because their crime, their robbery, isn't about the firearm. That isn't making them do that. They have already made the choice to take criminal action, to use force and violence to gain what they want. So whether they're using a firearm or a knife or a bat or they're using their hands, doesn't really matter. The problem is addressing why are they criminals? Why are they taking this criminal act? And the same thing applies to mass shootings. There is no difference in that. Yes, the crime itself is different, and it affects so many more people and so much more permanently. And we have a more visceral, emotional reaction to it than, say, what we saw on March 27th. But the fact is, the problem remains exactly the same, and so does the solution. You may not have thought about this. About 1 week ago, this was in Eyewitness News Channel 7 on Sunday, April 3rd. And we saw that gun violence in New York City is on a chronic level, according to Mayor Eric Adams. And he believed that a police anti-gun unit, which was able to remove 20 guns in the past few weeks, needs to continue their momentum because there is a 40% spike in homicides over the last 2 years. Most recently, on April 3rd, the shooting death of a 12-year-old boy in Brooklyn was one of the reasons why they said that they had to go after these guns, and they blamed it on ghost guns. That's the new thing. Much like what we saw in the past, we've heard that it's assault weapons, which don't exist. We're talking about rifles. Semi-automatic rifles were the problem. We've been told that the problem is the size of a magazine. Now we're being told it's ghost guns, an issue that is so small that it is not even recorded by the FBI, an issue that is so small that it has not ever been worth following because so few people are affected by it. Ghost guns, while popular, while catchy in the news media, have existed forever. They've always existed. Whether or not the gun that was used to kill a 12-year-old boy in Brooklyn, whether or not a ghost gun was used in Brooklyn, New York today, doesn't really matter. The problem isn't the firearm. The problem is the individual that used that firearm to attack innocent civilians for no cause, or no sane cause at the very least. The problem is the criminal, not the means by which the crime is being committed. Whether they're using a car, or whether they're using a baseball bat, or they use a firearm, it doesn't really matter. But we heard most recently that Joe Biden is trying to say, well, it's the ghost guns that we have to go after. We have to go after ghost guns because they're a growing issue. I've heard this story before. So have you. It's the semi-automatic rifles, which we're now going to rename as assault weapons. That's the problem. It's the size of the magazine. It's the pistol grip on the rifle. It's the type of bumper stock that they have. That's the problem. And if we just get rid of that one accessory, if we just get rid of that one type of firearm, then we will be safe. We just need to take away and strip you of some of your freedoms to do that. And inevitably, for decades, for the 54 years that I have been alive, that has been the same answer we have heard from Democrats and progressives, and for 54 years of my life, it has never been the solution because it doesn't address the problem. Let's be very honest with each other. This isn't new. And in fact, what happened in New York today, while it is tragic, is not shocking, it is not surprising, it is not unique. Just look at Chicago. This weekend in Chicago, 5 people were killed, 21 people were injured. Now, that includes an 11-year-old girl, but it wasn't all at the same time in one place. But is it any less of a horrendous story? Something that we have seen every weekend? Numbers far larger than this, far larger than what we saw in Brooklyn happen in Baltimore, in Chicago, in LA on a regular basis. This isn't a shocking thing. It is getting shocking coverage. And we are being shocked in the way that we are being presented this. But it isn't new. And it isn't a problem because of the guns. Again, New York, California, LA, Illinois, they are leaders in the country of the greatest number and the most severe restrictions on firearms in the entire nation. New York City is one of the hardest places to be able to get a firearm, and yet criminals do so every day. Crimes with guns occur every day. People die because of firearms, because of knives, because of handguns, because of cars, every day. So the problem isn't what we are being led to believe. And in our panic, in our anger, in our deep emotion about this situation, we are being misled. We are seeing politicians capitalize on our emotions to distract us from many other issues that are absolutely important to us. Absolutely important. There is nothing quite like having a crisis, because in a crisis, we will see so much change so quickly. And we already see that the groundwork has been laid out before us. Now, today, in 2022, the blame is, well, it's ghost guns. In 2023, there will be a new reason why we need even more gun control, even more restrictions, even more people like the fake Hispanic Beto O'Rourke that are going to tell us that we need to have our AR-15s, our AK-47s stripped away. Even more of a reason in 2023, we will hear that Joe Biden or whomever will say, well, now we have to take away 9mm handguns, that any firearm that is capable of firing more than 7 shots or 10 shots or 20 shots must be denied the public and must be taken away, that to own this is to be criminal. The root of it all, the truth is, that's not going to make it safer for you. That isn't the solution. That is political. It is politically expedient. It will allow certain individuals to be reelected. It is something that will give people a false sense of safety. It will infringe on people's rights, but it will not stop criminals. It has never stopped criminals. And that's important to make sure we understand in this highly emotional moment. That saying we're going to do more of the same thing that we have always done is saying that we are going to fail again, just like the way we failed the last time. We are paying attention to the wrong thing. We are focused on the wrong aspect. We need to get to the root of the problem. Now, some may say the part of the root of the problem is the firearm itself. And the answer is that's not true. Crime, if no other crime existed except with firearms, I would say, well, maybe you have a point. If no other crime existed except with rifles, which are called assault weapons now, if that were the case, then I'd say maybe you have an argument there. But that's not true. It's not even close to the reality. Not even close. And the numbers that we have gone over year after year after year have proven that. Because we have been through this exact same scenario every single year for the last 15 years. And maybe unpleasant to have to hear that. It is definitely sad to recognize that. But the truth is, this isn't new. And the solution that we've been offered every year for 40, 50 years isn't the one that is working. We've lost lots of freedom. We have been infringed. We have re-elected many, many politicians, some of them very good, some of them very bad, on the left and on the right. And it has no impact. It's not helping because it isn't the solution. This isn't about ego. This isn't about being a Republican, being an advocate of the Second Amendment. This is about trying to help. We are calling on every politician, left or right, Republican or conservative, whether you're a socialist or not. We are asking you a simple thing. Address the root problem. And if you don't know what that root problem is, which many people have different ideas about what it could be, then work together to find out what are the root problems. According to 538, in a report 3 years ago, the best answer we have is that there may be 38 different reasons why mass shootings occur. Let's investigate all 38 of them. Don't pick one, don't pick another, don't deal with the symptoms. Let's go after the root problems. My concern is, what is it that makes someone decide that the only answer they have available to them is to kill innocent individuals? If we can address that, we can take away mass shootings, or at least some of those mass shootings. And let's focus on that. Not the handgun or the rifle or the magazine size or whether it has a pistol grip and its cosmetics. I don't care about that. That isn't the problem. Because if you change the cosmetics of every firearm, if you limit the number of rounds in every firearm in the world that have ever been created, you will still have criminals. You will still have these deranged individuals that will go out and misuse these weapons or knives or baseball bats or cars or bombs. We've seen it repeatedly, year after year. They will continue to take their actions through whatever means they can get to. So let's be honest with each other. This isn't about gun control. This isn't about what firearm you may or may not own right now, nor is it about whether or not the government decides that I should or should not be able to own a firearm that the Second Amendment tells me I absolutely should be able to own. That isn't the question, because it will not make anyone safer. It hasn't for 5 decades. It won't going forward, because it's not the problem. It's time we actually look at the problem. Let's put the money to finding out the root causes so that we can get to answers to those root problems. Let's stop dealing with the symptoms. Let's stop taking advantage of the political collateral here. Let's deal with the real problem to save real lives. Perhaps you think I've misunderstood. Perhaps you think that guns are the root problem. The data that we have gone over for decades tells us that's not true. It's not even close. But we do want to hear what you have to say about this, whether you agree with us or not. We want to hear your voice on this. We want other politicians to hear your voice on this. And hopefully together we can come to an answer that helps everyone, regardless of your politics, regardless of your feelings about the Second Amendment. At least that's what we hope. We thank you for the time, and we look forward to speaking with you again very, very soon.